the panel about contracts. My name is Brendan Epstein. I work in music management, and I'm just here moderating today. I'm going to turn this over to everybody else to introduce themselves. So yeah, I think to get us started, we're just going to go down the line. Everybody wants to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about what you do, and why you're specifically here on this panel talking about contracts.
Sure. My name is Jon Paula. I am an independent YouTube content producer. I recently signed with a network, but before then I owned a network myself. So I have experience from both sides of the equation. And I am here to warn you about all the terrorists that are making a terrible mistake.
Oh,
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Debra Baum, and I have a company called DB Entertainment. I'm a music manager. I manage Rebecca Black, amongst others.
I've heard of it.
Hi, I'm Mike Weinstock. I founded Semaphore, and we work with a lot of your fellow talent on the business management side, so I get a lot of those conversations. I just signed this thing, what does it mean when it's too late? So hopefully after this panel you'll understand how to do things the right way.
Hi, I'm Templeton. I've been a video blogger since 2006, and I currently am the director of talent for My Life Channel, so I create other contracts for our vloggers.
I'm Faberlle. I'm actually the Director of Partnerships for Maker Studios, and I'm here because I believe, for the last about 3 years, we've signed enough partners in where I probably know a little bit about this.
Just a little bit? All right, so just to kick things off now, I think that my first question for all of you guys is going to be, why is it important for up-and-coming content creators to think about contracts? And, what's sort of the first step when somebody has a contract put in front of them, whether it be for a content network or merchandising or anything like that?
I think the most important thing when you get a contract put in front of you is making sure that it's actually going to be beneficial for both parties. Inherently you want to make sure it's beneficial for you, but if it's not beneficial for whoever you're signing with, then they're not going to be interested either. So you have to take a look at it from both sides and make sure it's fair. If you're getting something out of it, you're going to be benefiting from it, and so are the other people. And I think if both people win, then it's usually a good deal to move forward and sign it.
I think it's important to have proper representation, to walk you through every single point, so you absolutely know what it says, because there's a lot of legal jargon, and I think it's really important to, aside from having proper representation, have a good lawyer look at it to make sure, because I've seen in my 2 years of representing Rebecca, lots of YouTubers I meet, and they sign things and they're like, well, I kind of had a quick look at it, and they don't realize how long they're tied to something or what their limitations are in dealing with their own channel. So.
I certainly second that motion, but also I feel it's really important to have a mutual understanding for both parties, because a lot of times there'll be the meeting that sets the contract in motion, and if you speak with each party, meaning either the brand company or the network, and you ask them what they believe they're supposed to deliver to the talent, and then you ask the talent what they heard was going to be delivered on their behalf, it'd be like they went to separate meetings. So I feel like before you even get to the attorney stage, which is important, and usually could run $1,000 an hour between both sides with the attorneys, make sure you're even on the same page. Too many times people think something, and then the contract comes and it doesn't even address any of their concerns.
My advice would be to go slowly with it all. Just take your time and read it through and take all these guys' advice and get legal representation and everything like that. If a company really wants to sign you, they'll wait.
Yeah, I would be really hesitant if someone wanted to rush you through a contract.
Yeah.
It's like if they're not allowing you to take your time, then they probably aren't the right fit for you.
I would have to definitely second that, and I think one of the biggest issues that we kind of see as networks is also that for a lot of the partners, it's probably the first time they've ever seen a contract, or maybe their parents have a mortgage and they've seen a contract in the past, but in all honesty, probably a good percentage are either minors or it's the first time they're actually signing something outside maybe like their cell phone or along those lines that will take 2 years for something, and they don't necessarily look at it that way. They're like, well, maybe if I sign this within the next, month or two, my whole entire life will change. And when that doesn't happen, they just don't take the contracts that seriously, and it's kind of like, hey, can I just get out of this contract that I signed? So yeah, that would be my advice, would be definitely to know that these things are typically binding, and to be really just sure and have somebody definitely give you a second opinion as you read these things.
Yeah, there are two things that were said here that I want to follow up on. One was something that Michael said with regards to making sure that everybody's on the same page, and often you'll have a content producer or an artist feeling one way walking away from a meeting, and you'll have a network or whoever they're signing a contract with walking away feeling completely differently. How do you have tips for some of these people on how to solidify that meeting of the minds, making sure that everybody's on the same page? Is there a specific mode of communication that's better, whether it be in writing or following up with in-person meetings with recaps or stuff like that?
I think the easiest way to start that dialogue is literally just take some bullet points. And it needs to be really simple because everybody has to agree on this. If the network says, we'll give you better monetization, well, that's excellent, but what does that mean? Does that mean 10% above your current monetization? Does that mean fixed at X dollars per unit? So kind of put down these points and really get clarification on to make sure that not only are you on the same page just conceptually, but the expectation is realistic. And if they're going to help boost your brand, well, again, what does that mean? Does it mean you're going to collab with a very high profile star and expect 100,000 new subscribers, or does it mean somebody at your level and you get 10,000 subscribers? So there's no right or wrong answers in these dialogues, but it's just really critical for the success of your contract, because I have clients with probably every network, and there are, within the same network, you'll have people who love the network and hate the network and can't leave the network. So it's not the networks, it's not the system, it's the relationship and how they started off. And if you could start off on the right foot, if everybody's on the same page, your life will be so much better.
You definitely want to, above all else, work out every possible detail and minimize any and all possible misunderstandings. If both parties are never surprised, then you did a good job. But a surprise in a contract is always a bad thing, in my experience. It's like, oh, I didn't know this was going to happen. I didn't think you were going to be able to do this. You said you'd be able to boost my subscribers. Why am I only seeing, 5%? It's like, well, you didn't specify exactly what the number was, and that's kind of your own fault. So you have to make sure to minimize any possible surprise, either good or bad.
And then one thing that Andy said actually kind of leads into the next question I have, which is with regards to people eventually realizing that maybe the contract that they're in isn't something that they expected or wanted to be in. Can you guys give an example of an experience that you've had where somebody signed into a contract or somebody's agreed to certain terms and then it ended up being not exactly what they expected, and then how you dealt with those circumstances?
I guess I could probably come up with at least one example. I'm not going to go by names, but probably a few months back we signed in a partner who I don't know, it was a lifestyle channel, and I think the concept or what they interpreted to mean was that somehow her earnings were going to double and her subscribers were going to magically increase. And every month she would contact me and basically tell me that she wanted out of the contract because she was apparently making less money. I would explain to her a lot of the things that I thought she knew, like her viewership was going down and she wasn't uploading as often, and things that weren't necessarily the network's fault, but I would take my time and really just kind of wanted her to understand that it wasn't the network itself that was going in her pocket, and that's why she was making less. So we're now probably about 9 months into her contract, and every single month I have to do the exact same thing. I have to explain to her and go through her analytics and explain exactly how each of her videos is doing, and ultimately she now realizes that she is kind of in this 1-year agreement, she's waiting out the next 3 months. The reality of it is that she believes that when she leaves the network, she'll go exactly back to where she was a year prior, and as we all know, YouTube's CPMs, RPMs, they fluctuate. So for her to kind of assume that as soon as she gets out of her network, she will go back to what she was making a year ago is kind of a presumption that it's probably going to be wrong, but you know, that's kind of where we've been for the last 9 months with this particular partner.
I think more than often, I'm surprised when people don't ask about their exit strategy and what options they have. They just kind of don't think about it and get more excited about what's going to happen in the duration of the contract. But it's important to think about the divorce when you're getting married, right? Yeah, just make sure everything's laid out very explicitly. Like, what happens to ownership? What happens to licensing when you split apart? What happens to your content?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I also think that it's important, some of the contracts I've seen in the last couple of years have been where there's bullet points, and I've had to ask a lot of people to really, walk me through and write a paragraph to explain when you're saying that you're going to help my client increase her subscribers, or we're going to do some kind of co-branding deals. There should be timelines to things. There should be absolutely get their plan, and also with respect to when you sign with the network, making sure that it's transparent, that you can still see what your income is. I think that's really important to put in the agreement to make sure that you're still aware of how much is coming in, especially if by chance you just do a 50-50 or you get an advance. I think it's really important to know what's going on behind the accounting.
I think duration is a key point you hit up, because a lot of people ask me, well, how do I really know if this relationship is going to be good? And the best you can do is go into the relationship with a good understanding and make sure you're on the same page, because it'd be great if nothing came up that you didn't expect, but that's not reality in business. So the key is, if you're on the same page with almost everything and these things pop up, you'll be able to deal with them and everybody will be fine. It's really the problem when you're already fighting and then things come up, and that's just the disaster. So duration is kind of your magic solution, because if it's only a year, like this talent who's out in 3 more months, no matter how miserable her life is, in 3 months she's out, and she may be wrong and likely will be wrong, but I'm sure you don't like those calls every month, so it's a mutual parting. But if this was a 36-month contract, this would be a 36-month nightmare. And you need to be realistic, though. You can't say I want a 3-month contract, because there's too much work for a short duration. But there's no reason that there couldn't be some sort of relationship testing, maybe a 12 to 18-month contract, to make sure not only is everybody on the same page, but that it works. Like on the other panel, they were saying YouTube changes. By the time this panel's over, there'll be changes that will impact everybody. Well, maybe for your niche and this MCN, it's just not a good fit. In 12 months or 18 months, you guys can part friends, and everybody can go their separate ways. To break a contract is very problematic, and the more successful you are, the more problematic it is. Because if your channel's a disaster and nobody's making any money, then you're more likely to get a break because nobody wants to deal with you anymore. But if you're successful and there's a lot of money at stake, you can be sure you cannot break, and the attorneys will come out and it'll be your worst nightmare ever. So that's just a little kind of irony in all this, is the more successful you become, the more serious your contract is, and basically the higher the stakes for everything you do.
I think the bottom rule I've seen a lot of problems from is try to avoid any contract that is lifetime. In the world of YouTube, like 2 years is already a lifetime. So if it actually is in perpetuity for the life of your existence, try to avoid those ones, because YouTube turns over in such a fast timetable. Jenna Marbles is number 4 most subscribed now. She didn't even exist on the site like 2 years ago. So if you're signing a 3-year contract, you have to be mindful of that 3 years from now, you could be the next huge thing in top 10, and just the same, you could fall right off the top 100 and be like a nobody. So you have to keep that in mind, that things move very quick in this space, so the contract should reflect the opportunity to give you an exit strategy in a reasonable timetable. You have to, like Mike said, give the networks or the other people an opportunity to actually make it work. And you can't just say, like, I only want to sign a 3-week contract, because if it doesn't work by then, well, then it's not going to work at all. So you have to have an open-minded relationship with it, but I would be very hesitant to sign anything longer than 2 years, I would say, to the max. At least starting out. When you extend from there, that's one other thing.
You know, we're talking a lot about content creators who have seen some, you know, at least mild to great success. You know, what about the kid making videos in his bedroom who starts getting a decent amount of views and then has a contract put in front of him? I mean, what's the very first thing that he should be doing? And I pose that question as sort of like a caveat. Drawing a blank on now, so let's just go with that. What's the very first thing that he should be doing? And with the thought that you know, the less famous you are, the less popular you are, the less leverage you have in some of these negotiations.
I would think immediately you would want to just ask yourself if you even need a contract like that. Like, if you're just starting out, is a network going to be able to help you any more than just hard work? Like, that's the first thing, is whether or not this is actually going to be a good fit right now. Some people get the contract or a network offer in front of them, and they think, well, I've made it. I just made the big time. I'm going to be a YouTube partner tomorrow. It's like, well, take a step back and realize that maybe you don't need that right now if you only have 200 subs. Like, maybe wait a little bit and see if you can grow on your own, and wait until you actually have some leverage and you actually have something to offer. Because if you don't, they can take advantage of you and they can give you like a bad contract. It's like, well, you're not making any money on your own, and we can give you, you know, 50% of $10 a month, which is way more than the $2 you're making now. So keep that in mind.
I think for somebody starting out, there is a little bit of a harsh reality, because if, you know, to get an attorney to review your stuff, you're looking at several $1,000s, and if you're making $10 a month, you don't have several $1,000s to spend on the attorney. So the best I can suggest at that point is, you know, that's an option, to wait till you have some leverage, or, as you know, have somebody who you know, friend, family, connection, who has business experience, put eyes on it. And it might not be the best solution for you, but it's a heck of a lot better than you just reading it by yourself. And, you know, as he said, just, you've never seen a contract except for Verizon before, so you have nothing to really base it on.
We talked about duration being probably the most important term in a contract. You know, are there others that you would suggest that people look out for?
I think the big one would probably just be the financial end of it. There were a lot of horror stories a couple years ago with a network that will go unnamed that were giving people a flat rate RPM for lifetime or for very long year contracts, and they were kind of taking advantage of a lot of the smaller and, let's say, less educated partners who weren't even aware of the fact that the RPM they already had was better than what they were being offered. And this network was saying, well, we'll give you a flat rate, $2.50 for 3 years, it'll be great. But if they actually had done their homework, they were already making like $2.50 or $3 per 1,000 hits. So by signing with this, they just kind of took the network's word for it and said, like, well, this is going to be great, I'll be set, I'll be a YouTube partner, I'll be making money, but we're already kind of making what you could have before. So do your homework, especially on the financial side of things, because ultimately I feel like if you're signing a contract, you're in it for the money in some respect. Whether you're doing it full-time or part-time, duration and financing is probably the two most important things on there, because I feel like everything else, whether it's networking, collaboration, or promotion, are all things you can do yourself to a certain extent, and you're not signing the contract, I would hope, just to get like a collaboration with Shay Carl. You're signing it also to get financial support and other benefits from a network.
I would just add to that, IP is incredibly important. Yeah. A lot of people are doing deals where they don't really understand what it even means to share an IP and intellectual property. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, a great example on Stage Maker's Epic Rap Battle is an amazing success that's a Maker property that everybody benefited from tremendously, but everybody knows the project and what's going on. So you just need to know, kind of to your point about the divorce, you got to make sure if you leave, is it really your idea or did you share it? And there's nothing wrong with sharing it because they bring production and a lot of expertise, but you just need to know what's going on, and that's really what it boils down to, is knowing. The other red flag is exclusivity. If you're giving like worldwide rights to somebody and you don't know what that means or why you're doing that, there should be a dialogue so you really understand, because you don't want to get tripped up later doing something else and realizing, oh, wait a second, I can't even do this passion project because I'm tied to this contract. So I'd say those are like the two flags I see all the time.
So we're a little bit tight on time. We have a couple minutes for questions. Anybody have any for the panel?
Do you recommend artists to kind of have their own guidelines and contracts within themselves, like what they want, what they expect, for us to present that to a given network or something? Is that something that?
I mean, I think that, most of the networks have most contracts pretty much look the same, but, it's something that we typically do. We want to know how you feel. We're, artists first. Like, that is what, especially Maker has since day one been like, you're sitting on the other side of the table, and I really want to know what you want to get out of this. And it's not any, thing other than, if it makes sense, we will work with you to, make sure that we're both, happy with it. And we do it all the time. We'll take your suggestions, and, maybe it's that our legal department has to change things up a little bit so that it makes sense for you. And so we do that all the time.
I think if you're having an open dialogue with, during a contract negotiation, there's no downside to just opening your opinion and being honest. Like, I would like to see this and this. And if they can't do it, then they can't do it. But there's no downside to just telling them the truth and asking. So, absolutely.
Yeah, often it's actually really helpful to hear what you want, because maybe it's something we haven't thought about that we can include in future contracts.
It's a good question, and I think if you initiate and you put down what you want, then even just with the meeting, when you're engaging with them in negotiations, at least you have all the bullet points that you want, that you'd like to see, and, fingers crossed you get them all, but it's good to have an agenda.
Other questions? Yes.
How important is it to have an attorney that is familiar with the YouTube or any contract attorney? What you recommend? And if so, how do you find them?
I feel like it's probably a lot rarer to even find the former, so I would settle for the latter. Personally, anyway.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right.
I think there's definitely people.
I mean, are there even lawyers that exist that specialize only in new media?
There are
probably-
some in San Francisco that are tied to
Just
it. but-
some, though.
Yeah, there's not a lot of them,
Yeah.
but I think an entertainment contract, somebody that's familiar with that is really gonna be, if you can't find somebody who specializes, because there's not one kind of lawyer
I
like
mean,
that.
the terms are pretty substantially similar to a recording contract or
Yeah, that's true.
something like that. There's a lot of entertainment lawyers out there. Any other questions?
Go on. Do you have a question back there?
Great, well, guys, thank you for taking the time and being here, and thanks to everybody on the panel.
You're welcome.
Oh, you did it.